You want to be unstoppable by 2026. You set the goal, you visualized it, you told yourself this is your year, and then January happened, February happened, March happened. And by April, you were back to the same patterns, the same excuses, the same version of yourself you swore you would leave behind. Carl Jung understood something most people never figure out. Transformation is not about massive leaps. It is about the 1%. 1% more conscious today than you were yesterday. 1% more integrated. 1% more willing to face what you have been avoiding. And if you commit to that 1% every single day for the next year, you will not recognize yourself by 2026. Not because you forced yourself to change, but because you finally stopped pretending to be someone you are not. Let me be clear, this is not about productivity hacks. This is not about morning routines or manifestation or positive thinking. This is about individuation. Jung's term for becoming who you actually are instead of who everyone else needs you to be. And here is the thing most people miss. Individuation is not comfortable. It is not Instagram-worthy. It requires you to look at the parts of yourself you have spent your entire life hiding. Your anger, your envy, your fear, your shame. The stuff you shove down because it does not fit the image you are trying to maintain. But those parts do not disappear. They run the show from the shadows. And until you bring them into the light 1% at a time, you stay stuck. The first 1% stop performing and start noticing. Here is what happens every single day. You wake up and immediately become whoever you think you need to be. The productive employee, the good partner, the person who has it all together. You spend so much energy maintaining this image that you forget there is a real person underneath. And that person is exhausted. Jung called this the persona. It is the mask you wear to survive in the world. And it is necessary. You cannot walk around exposing every thought and feeling to everyone. But when the mask becomes your identity, when you forget it is a mask, you lose yourself. You start making decisions based on what looks good instead of what feels true. You choose careers that impress people but drain you. You stay in relationships that look perfect but feel empty. You achieve things that should make you happy but leave you wondering why you feel so hollow. The 1% rule here is simple. Notice when you are performing. Just notice. You do not have to change it yet. Just catch yourself in the act. You are about to say what someone wants to hear instead of what you actually think. Notice it. You are about to agree to something that violates your boundaries because saying no feels risky. Notice it. You are smiling through frustration because expressing it might make you difficult. Notice it. Try this today. Pick one interaction, just one, and pay attention to the gap between what you feel and what you show. That gap is where your energy leaks. That gap is why you are tired. That gap is what the 1% rule will close day by day, choice by choice. The second 1%, sit with what you have been avoiding. Most people are running, they just do not realize it. They stay busy. They fill every moment with noise, with tasks, with scrolling, with anything that keeps them from being alone with their thoughts. Because being alone with your thoughts means facing what you have been avoiding. And what you have been avoiding is usually the exact thing that needs your attention. Jung said the unconscious will always find a way to communicate. If you ignore it, it speaks through your body, through your anxiety, through your insomnia, through that tightness in your chest you cannot explain, through the irritability that shows up out of nowhere. Your psyche is trying to get your attention and you keep turning up the volume on the distractions. Here is the uncomfortable truth. You cannot become unstoppable while running from yourself. You have to stop. You have to sit down. You have to let whatever is beneath the surface come up. And I am not talking about some dramatic therapeutic breakdown. I am talking about 5 minutes. 5 minutes where you sit in silence and let yourself feel whatever is there without immediately trying to fix it or explain it away. Take someone like Kobe Bryant. He did not just train his body. He worked with a sports psychologist. He faced his fears. He looked at the parts of himself that wanted to quit, that were afraid of failure, and he integrated them instead of pretending they did not exist. That is what made him unstoppable. Not just talent, not just work ethic. Integration. Try this tomorrow, set a timer for 5 minutes, sit somewhere quiet, do not meditate, do not breathe in any special pattern, just sit. And notice what comes up. Anxiety, boredom, sadness, restlessness. Do not push it away, just observe it. That is your 1% for the day, and if you can do that consistently, you will start to see patterns. You will start to understand what your unconscious has been trying to tell you. The third 1%, own what you judge in others. Here is where it gets really uncomfortable. Everything that irritates you about other people is showing you something about yourself. Jung was obsessed with this concept. He called it projection. You see someone being selfish and it triggers you. You see someone being weak and you feel contempt. You see someone being arrogant and you cannot stand them. And you think it is about them, but it is not. It is about the parts of yourself you have disowned. Maybe you were taught that wanting things for yourself is selfish, so you buried your ambition. And now when you see someone unapologetically going after what they want, it makes you angry. Not because they are doing anything wrong, but because they are living the part of yourself you rejected. Maybe you learned that showing vulnerability is weak, so you hide your struggles. And now when someone admits they are struggling, you judge them. Not because they are weak, but because their honesty threatens the armor you have been wearing. This is how the shadow works. Everything you refuse to see in yourself, you project onto the world. And it controls you. It makes you reactive. It makes you exhausting to be around. It keeps you from forming real connections because you are too busy defending against what other people represent. The 1% rule here. Every time you feel a strong reaction to someone, ask yourself what it is revealing about you. Not what it says about them, what it says about you. This is not comfortable. This is not easy. But this is where the power is, because every projection you reclaim, every judgment you own gives you back a piece of yourself. And that piece is energy. Energy you can use to build the life you actually want instead of the one you think you should want. Look at someone like Oprah. She talks openly about her shadow work, about facing the parts of herself she was ashamed of, about owning her story instead of hiding from it. That is why she connects with millions of people, not because she is perfect, but because she is integrated. She stopped projecting her pain onto the world and started transforming it. The fourth 1%. Speak the truth you are scared to say. You are holding back something right now. There is a conversation you need to have, a boundary you need to set, a truth you need to speak, and you are not speaking it because you are afraid. Afraid of conflict, afraid of judgment, afraid of being rejected. So you stay silent, you accommodate, you swallow your truth to keep the peace. And every time you do that, you betray yourself a little more. Jung believed that neurosis is the suffering of a soul that has not discovered its meaning. And meaning requires truth. Your truth, not the sanitized version, not the version that makes everyone comfortable. The raw, unfiltered truth of what you actually think, feel, and want. And when you suppress that, when you edit yourself into acceptability, you create inner conflict. You fragment. You become a collection of personas instead of a person. Here is the 1%. Say one true thing today that scares you. Maybe it is telling someone no. Maybe it is admitting you do not have it all figured out. Maybe it is expressing a need you have been afraid to voice. It does not have to be a big dramatic confrontation. It can be small, but it has to be real, and it has to be yours. Think about someone like Brené Brown. She built her entire career on telling the truth about vulnerability, about shame, about the parts of the human experience we usually hide. And it terrified her. She talks about having a breakdown after her TED Talk went viral because she felt so exposed. But she kept speaking her truth, and that authenticity is what made her message powerful. That is what changed millions of lives. You cannot become unstoppable while hiding. You cannot build real success on a foundation of lies, even small ones, even polite ones. The truth sets you free, not immediately, not comfortably, but eventually. And the 1% rule means you start today. One honest sentence, one authentic moment, one choice to be real instead of acceptable. The fifth 1%, claim your ambition without apology. Let me guess. You want more, you have big goals. You have dreams that feel too big to say out loud. And somewhere along the way, you learned that wanting too much is greedy. That ambition is selfish. That you should be grateful for what you have and stop reaching for more. So you downplay your goals, you minimize your achievements, you apologize for taking up space, and you wonder why you feel stuck. Jung understood that the shadow does not just contain negative traits. It contains everything you were taught was unacceptable. And for a lot of people, especially women, especially people from cultures that prioritize collective harmony over individual achievement, ambition lives in the shadow. You want success, recognition, power, influence, but you have been conditioned to hide that, to pretend you stumbled into your achievements, to credit everyone but yourself. This is self-sabotage. This is how you stay small. This is how you end up living half a life, pursuing half your potential because you are too afraid to fully claim what you want. The 1% rule here is to own your ambition, out loud, to yourself first, then to others. Stop hedging. Stop qualifying. Stop apologizing. You want what you want, and that is not something to be ashamed of. Look at someone like Elon Musk. You can have opinions about the guy, but he does not apologize for his ambition. He wants to colonize Mars. He says it plainly. He pursues it unapologetically. And that clarity, that ownership, that refusal to shrink his vision to make others comfortable is part of what makes him unstoppable. You do not have to want to colonize Mars, but you do have to stop pretending your dreams are smaller than they are. Try this. Write down what you actually want, not what sounds reasonable, not what other people would approve of. What you actually want: career success, financial freedom, creative recognition. Write it down, say it out loud, and then do one thing today, just one thing that moves you toward it. That is your 1%. And if you do that every day, if you stop hiding your ambition and start feeding it, you will be shocked at what becomes possible. The sixth 1%, let yourself be angry. Anger is one of the most shadowcast emotions in our culture. You learn early that anger is bad, that it makes you difficult, that it needs to be controlled, managed, suppressed. So you swallow it, you rationalize it, you turn it into something more acceptable, like sadness or frustration or exhaustion. But the anger does not go away. It goes inward where it becomes depression, or it leaks out sideways as passive aggression, as sarcasm, as sudden explosions over small things. And you lose the information it was trying to give you. Jung saw emotions as messengers. Anger tells you a boundary has been crossed. It tells you something in your life is misaligned with your values. It tells you that you are tolerating what should not be tolerated. And when you refuse to listen, when you suppress the message, you lose access to your own guidance system. You lose the ability to protect yourself. You lose the power to change what needs changing. The 1% rule. Let yourself feel angry, not act on it recklessly. Feel it. Notice when anger arises, and instead of immediately pushing it down or justifying it away, sit with it. Ask what it is protecting. Ask what boundary was violated. Ask what it is trying to tell you about your life. Anger is not the enemy. Unconscious anger is the enemy. Integrated anger is power. Think about someone like Malcolm X. He did not suppress his anger at injustice. He channeled it. He used it as fuel for transformation, for advocacy, for change. His anger was not destructive because it was conscious. It was directed. It was integrated. And it made him a force for meaningful change. You do not have to be an activist to apply this. You just have to stop being afraid of your own fire. The next time someone crosses your boundary and you feel that flare of anger, do not smooth it over immediately. Do not perform understanding when you do not feel it. Notice the anger, validate it, and then decide consciously how to respond. That is integration. That is the 1%. The seventh 1%, stop using busyness as an identity. You are busy, of course you are. Everyone is busy. Busy is the default state of modern life. Busy is also the most socially acceptable form of avoidance. When you are busy, you do not have time to think. You do not have time to feel. You do not have time to question whether you are building a life you actually want or just a life that looks productive. Busyness becomes an identity. It becomes how you prove your worth. And underneath all that activity is often a terror of stillness. A fear that if you stop, if you actually pause and look at your life, you will have to confront what is not working. Jung warned that the unconscious will always find a way to speak. And if you do not create space for it through conscious reflection, it creates space for itself through crisis. Burnout, illness, breakdown, the body keeps the score, the psyche keeps the score, and eventually the bill comes due. The 1% rule, build in stillness. Just one moment in your day where you are not doing anything, not meditating, not optimizing, not producing, just being. It can be 5 minutes in your car before you go inside. It can be sitting with your coffee before you check your phone. It can be a walk without headphones. The point is to stop running long enough to hear what your unconscious is trying to tell you. Look at someone like LeBron James. The man is one of the busiest athletes on the planet, but he also prioritizes rest, recovery, mental health days. He knows that constant output without input leads to breakdown. He knows that stillness is not laziness. It is sustainability. It is how you stay unstoppable for decades instead of burning out in a few years. Try this. Pick one part of your day where you usually fill the space with busyness and leave it empty instead. Just for one day, see what happens, see what thoughts come up, see what feelings surface. That is your unconscious trying to communicate. That is where the real work begins. That is your 1%, the eighth 1%. Examine your envy without shame. Envy is the emotion no one wants to admit. It feels petty. It feels small. It feels like evidence that you are not as evolved or generous or secure as you want to be, so you hide it. You rationalize it. You perform happiness for other people's success while secretly feeling that twist in your gut. And because you refuse to look at it, you miss the gift it is trying to give you. Jung understood that envy is a map. It shows you what you desire but have not given yourself permission to pursue. When you see someone living a life that triggers envy, they are not your enemy. They are showing you a disowned part of yourself. They are living something you want but have convinced yourself you cannot have or should not want. And until you acknowledge that, until you own what you actually desire, envy will eat you alive. The 1% rule. When you feel envy, get curious. Do not judge it. Do not dismiss it. Ask what it is revealing. Someone has the career you want. That is information. Someone has the confidence you wish you had. That is showing you something about your own potential. Someone has the freedom you crave. That is your psyche telling you what needs to change. Think about someone like Steve Jobs. He openly talked about studying calligraphy, about being jealous of beautiful design, about wanting to create something that matched the elegance he saw in other people's work. He did not hide his envy. He used it as fuel. He let it show him what he valued, and then he built it. You can do the same thing on a smaller scale. Next time you feel that pang of envy scrolling through social media, stop. Do not scroll past it. Do not shame yourself for feeling it. Ask what it is pointing toward. That is your unconscious showing you what you have been denying yourself. That is your roadmap. That is your 1%. The 9th 1%. Release the need to control everything. Control is a defense mechanism. It is how the ego protects itself from feeling powerless. You overplan, you micromanage, you try to anticipate every possible outcome so nothing catches you off guard. And on the surface, this looks like responsibility. It looks like diligence. But underneath, it is fear. Fear that if you let go, even a little, everything will fall apart. Fear that you are not actually capable of handling uncertainty. Fear that without control, you will be exposed as inadequate. Jung taught that individuation requires embracing paradox. You have to hold the tension between control and surrender, between doing your part and trusting the process, between effort and acceptance. And most people collapse into one extreme or the other. They either try to control everything and exhaust themselves, or they give up control entirely and become passive. The integration point is somewhere in the middle. It is knowing what you can influence and releasing what you cannot. The 1% rule. Identify one thing you are trying to control that is actually outside your control and practice letting it go. Just for today, maybe it is how someone responds to you. Maybe it is the outcome of a project you have done your best on. Maybe it is whether people approve of your choices. You cannot control these things. You can influence them, but you cannot control them. And the energy you spend trying is energy you could be using to actually build your life. Look at someone like Michael Jordan. He famously could not control his teammates' performance. He could not control the referees. He could not control injuries or luck, but he could control his preparation, his effort, his response. He focused his energy there. And that focus, that ability to let go of what he could not change and double down on what he could, is part of what made him legendary. Try this. Next time you feel yourself spiraling into anxiety about something, ask yourself, can I actually control this? If the answer is no, practice releasing it. Not ignoring it, not pretending it does not matter, but consciously choosing not to waste your energy trying to force an outcome you cannot dictate. That is your 1%. And over time, that practice will change your entire relationship with stress. The 10th 1%. Honor your need for solitude. You need to be alone, not all the time, but more than you probably allow yourself. Solitude has been villainized in our culture. It gets confused with loneliness, with isolation, with antisocial behavior. So you force yourself into constant social engagement. You say yes to every invitation. You feel guilty for wanting time alone. And you wonder why you feel drained, resentful, and disconnected from yourself. Jung was clear that integration requires solitude. It requires time away from the demands, the expectations, the projections of others. It requires space where you can hear your own voice instead of the chorus of voices telling you who you should be. Without that space, you become a reflection of everyone else's needs. You lose yourself in the noise. And then you wake up one day and realize you do not even know what you actually want because you have spent so long trying to be what everyone else needs. The 1% rule: claim time for solitude without apologizing for it. Schedule it, protect it, treat it as non-negotiable. It does not have to be hours. It can be 30 minutes. But it has to be yours, no phone, no people, no obligations. Just you reconnecting with yourself, processing your experience, integrating what has been happening in your life. Think about someone like Beyoncé. She disappears for months at a time. She protects her creative process. She does not feel the need to constantly be visible or available. And when she returns with something powerful because she gave herself the space to create it. You do not have to be Beyoncé to apply this principle. You just have to stop feeling guilty for needing time alone. Try this week, block out 1 hour where you are completely unavailable. Do not schedule anything. Do not respond to anyone. Just be with yourself. Read, write, think, walk, whatever you need. That is your 1%. And if you protect that time consistently, you will notice something shift. You will start to feel more grounded, more clear, more like yourself, because you are finally giving yourself space to exist without performing for anyone. Bringing it all together. The compound effect of 1% here is what most people miss about individuation. It is not dramatic. It is not a lightning bolt moment where everything suddenly makes sense. It is cumulative. It is the compound effect of showing up for yourself, 1% at a time, every single day. You notice when you are performing, you sit with what you have been avoiding. You own your projections, you speak your truth. You claim your ambition, you feel your anger, you stop hiding in busyness. You examine your envy, you release control. You honor your solitude. And each one of these choices by itself is small. But when you stack them day after day, they become transformation. By 2026, if you commit to this 1% rule, you will not be the same person. Not because you forced yourself to change. Not because you followed some rigid program. But because you finally stopped abandoning yourself. You stopped performing. You stopped projecting. You stopped hiding. And in that space, in that willingness to be real instead of acceptable, you became unstoppable. Not invincible. Not perfect. But integrated, whole, aligned with who you actually are instead of who you were taught to be. Jung said that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. That is what the 1% rule offers. Not a quick fix, not a shortcut, but a sustainable path to becoming someone you do not have to recover from being. Someone you do not have to escape from on the weekends. Someone who can look in the mirror and recognize the person looking back. That is worth 1%. That is worth every single day between now and 2026. That is how you become unstoppable,